we've had. We started in our biz in 1991 and really focused on advancing organics recycling with the overall vision in terms of also developing markets. But the start of it was really looking at how to divert organics from the landfill. Since that time, we've expanded the breadth of our industry and the depth of the industry through supporting a variety of programs, both within the industry as well as outreach to consumer. When you look at what our original mandate was, I'm having Rod change the slide, so if we just move to the next slide, Rod, it's really to advance organics recycling. So how are we done on that? Moving to the next slide, we really started off and, composting well before all of us got involved was really a backyard phenomenon for the most part, or on-site. And from that backyard compost history, we've now expanded to have facilities both from a private facility perspective as well as municipal, and a combination of both. But basically through every step that the industry has built, proven that organics recycling can happen regardless of place. Moving to the next slide, organics, what the great news is, despite the fact that organics advocates have been severely underfunded and under-recognized in terms of the potential for organics diversion, that organics are now the #1 material recycled in Canada, and that's a fantastic attribute to the folks in every region and every locale who have chosen to divert organics to a compost pile of size, regardless of size. Now our current mandate is really, in addition to continuing to build a diversion, because there's still a lot of work to done, is to go ahead and start to really focus on advancing compost quality, focused on the products that we're producing from that compost pile, whether it's from the anaerobic digestion facility, which eventually will produce digestate and go into a compost facility, or any parts in between. In terms of when we look at advancing compost quality, we have to go well beyond what the government has envisioned in terms of what is compost quality. Because right now, the existing regulations really focus on environmental health and safety, and there's an absence of agronomic performance perspective in the regulations, regardless if it's the Canadian Food Inspection Agency through the Fertilizer Act and regulations, any of the provincial ministries of environment, or the voluntary standards through the Standards Council of Canada. And that's where the CQA is fitting in terms of we're going to go ahead and make sure that it's a given that our products are safe and environmentally responsible, but also for us to go ahead and have increase the value of our products and our reputation of performance. The CQA has been developed by the members of the Compost Council of Canada to focus on agronomic performance. Many of you already know, and some of you are already part of the program. It's a voluntary program. It allows compost facilities to adhere to the regulatory requirements of their jurisdiction, but also to start to test according to agronomic performance. What differentiates two different composts is in terms of salt, pH, and a number of other agronomic attributes. And for basically the same price of adhering to the requirements for environmental regulations, we're able to tack on the real important thing, and that is the quality of the performance of the product. And this chart has been developed by A&L Canada, who is one of our partners in terms of lab testing for the CQA, really focused on the fact that we want to get away from whether it's good or bad compost, but directing the compost to the right market. And so there are different parameters, different uses, and each requires a certain type of compost. And Rod will be talking about the various markets accordingly. So basically, in terms of as you hear the message now, more and more, we are going to be focused as a council in terms of our product marketing, starting to differentiate different products, recognizing the fact that we want to get away from good and bad, but really the right compost for the right use so that we can feed the soil. And so thank you very much, because we really do need to continue to maintain and enhance that consumer trust, because that's paramount in terms of us being able to sell not just one bag or one bulk shipment of compost, but the 100th version, and we need to go and make sure that our players, whether it's the CFIA, the Standards Council, the CCME, the Provincial Ministry of the Environment, and your fellow players in the compost business are aligned and allow us to do the work that we need to do. So our task is really on an ongoing basis is to get our industry to participate on a voluntary basis to the CQA and to outreach to our stakeholders. And it really is an issue of it's everyone's turn. It's your turn to be part of this program. And so Rod, if I can just turn it over to you to really focus on how we're going to feed the soil in a variety of markets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. That was a great introduction to what I want to speak about today, which is really, as Susan mentioned, I've been involved with the technical support to organic recycling operations for the past 20 years, and over the past 10 years have got quite engaged in large-scale composting production facilities, providing technical support, and looking at different compost markets, and obviously working together with the Compost Council of Canada over a number of years. We've really started to work on the Compost Quality Alliance. The CQA program we see as that next step, as Susan mentioned. It's the next step for compost producers, compost manufacturers, all compost consumers to have one Quality Alliance program that will help really pull together the support for the different compost markets. We need to focus on composting as being compost facility operators, as being manufacturers of finished product. Getting people to think in that manner is something that we've worked on, and we've come up with together we've come up with this compost market development pyramid, and this is what I'm going to be speaking on today, trying to give people a bit of an understanding of how the compost market, how we see the compost markets for a compost producer. If you're going to be a new player, you're going to be a new compost producing facility, how do you get to the point of, okay, I'm manufacturing this compost product, how can I build a plan to ensure that I'm getting the best value for my products? How can I step my value of my compost up as I build on my quality, build on my consistency? So what we've sort of tried to develop here is looking at it from a pyramid aspect. I'm going to walk through sort of the bottom of the pyramid, which is the entry level location. I'll pull these down and we'll just go at them. I'm going to work through some slides that will talk about each of these particular markets. And the reason that we've set this up like a pyramid is that the bottom level would be considered the entry level. This is the level with which a compost producer should first, how we would say, master or first get a handle on as he works his way toward the other opportunity markets up higher up the scale. You know, at each step of this compost market, each step as you move up the levels, there are unique compost quality challenges. Obviously, Compost Quality Alliance testing, CQA testing is being designed to help in determining your ability to move into each of these different markets. And when I mentioned that each level of the pyramid has its own unique challenges, I guess a good example is the first level is supply of compost, basic organic matter content compost to topsoil blenders. Whether you take the initiative to produce topsoil on your own compost facility, so it's a finished topsoil before it leaves, or whether you supply a compost that will be used to blend to produce a topsoil. When you start out, the big focus on that step is just primarily organic matter. So organic matter being the key qualifier for compost into topsoil. Now, as you move to higher steps up the ladder, as you move to agriculture markets, obviously now your compost is going to have many more quality questions, consistency questions with relation to what are the nutrient profiles for your compost? How is your consistency being proven over time? How can we move into these other markets? And really the CQA testing protocols give that level of assurance that you can develop markets into that next category. Now as you move higher up and you move to landscape growing medias and mulches, here you enter into a market that is very concerned with things like maturity, stability. These are all important factors that will need to be documented, and things like foreign materials, foreign matter, sharps, other items, these are all quite critical as you move up into this next level. The other idea of the pyramid here, as we move up through, and I'll get to slides that discuss each of these particular sections in detail. Really, you're moving up a bit of on the side. You see, you're moving up a bit of a value-added pricing scheme. Now, obviously, I've set a level of prices to set as an example of how they gauge from the first level up to the higher levels. Most importantly is that pricing is very geographically, regionally independent. Think of compost and topsoil as a weighted material, the suppliers of which are all going to be within a 1-hour trucking distance. And so I've put some prices on the side to give an example of how their level of increases as you move to each of the different categories, as you move up the level of the pyramid. But obviously the pricings are dependent on a lot of geographical or regionally dependent items, such as availability of native sources, what is available for loamy soil, floodplain soil, farmland stripping soil, what is available with respect to peat moss and other age barks that are the traditional materials that have fit into these markets long before compost has become a major source of soil amendment, a major source of the material that's used in these products. So as we move to those things, you'll see how different regions have developed various regulations or specifications that are applicable to a region that may or may not give a beneficial advantage to a recycled content topsoil, to the use of pasteurized compost in agriculture, or to the use of compost in landscapes. There are different regions across Canada where regulators have found ways to promote recycled content in these products. Some have some restrictive topsoil regulations, which are in place to minimize or to make it more difficult to strip floodplains or farmlands, regulations that protect topsoil or native sources of wetland or peat. So these are the kind of things that I'm going to talk about as I go up through. I'll take a little bit of time at each of the particular levels. The pyramid itself is designed to kind of show you the part that you need to remember is you should really get in on the bottom floor and get your quality and get your productivity as a supplier of soil amendment to topsoil blenders. That's step one. And then as you move up, you can move into agriculture. You can provide that soil amendment to agriculture. You can move into some products for landscape growing medias, mulches, and then you move your way up the chart. So I'll move to the next slide. Now this slide I'm talking about just the very beginning, and that's with the topsoil blenders. I could speak on topsoil blending for quite a while. I don't have the time. I'm not going to provide all the particular specifications for the various topsoil blends that are used for turf topsoils, sports field topsoils, wetland topsoils. There's quite a level of sophistication just in this particular market segment. But the general rule of thumb, I mean, it's 50-50. a loamy sand and a compost by volume will make a decent garden topsoil, a decent yard topsoil, lawn topsoil, that will have the kind of organic matter in that 5 to 10% range, some drainage, some compaction characteristics that screened material will definitely command attention in its particular topsoil market. It's obviously darker, it's richer, and it competes very well with other supplies, other traditional supplies that are stripped from farmland or floodplain. As I mentioned, topsoil being a very local, a very regional, when we talk about markets for topsoil, we're talking about a very regional, a very local market, and there's really your municipality, your local, provincial, territory representatives. These are the people that can help provide a pull onto topsoil markets made with compost. You need to take a message to them about the benefits of converting regular strip topsoil into compost blended or manufactured topsoil supply. Things like water conservation is a big item. Topsoil that has a higher organic matter content in it obviously retains a lot more water, and it's much more beneficial for water usage. These are things municipalities think of. Obviously preventing some of the harmful topsoil mining practices, talking about different communities that have well fields or surface water aquifers, the amount of additional protection that you get from promoting a manufactured blended topsoil, something that the municipalities, the provincial regulators can understand. Cost savings. We look at sports fields and municipal lands that have been produced or amended with compost amendments, and we've looked at the benefits and how that has benefited over time. So you really get some of those other aspects to convince local, municipal, really to get them to buy into that type of recycled compost topsoil, is to get them to support specifications, to make regulations, and to help push this market along. Now, the next level up is as we move compost as a soil amendment into agriculture. Now, I'm going to target this part of my talk specifically about agriculture, but when you're benefiting soil or revegetating or soil amending with compost to improve the fertility and compaction and drainage and organic matter levels within soil, these same concepts apply to both agriculture, mine reclamation, land application, anywhere where you're looking to take a soil that could use a little bit of support. This is the kind of market we're talking about here. So, as I mentioned, when you get to this market, you're basically looking at compost applications as part of the nutrient component within soil. So compost applications will supplement chemical fertilizer use. Obviously, you've got as a safer pasteurized alternative to traditional manure spreading. Compost has been fully pasteurized, so it's safe for those applications. You're again looking at the organic matter levels. Basically, cropping and cropland agriculture practices tend to burn organic matter over time. By introducing a program, it doesn't have to be very much, 10 ton an acre, 10 ton an acre, 20 ton a hectare, that type of light application of compost every year. You're basically preserving the fertility and the organic matter in your cropland so that you don't deplete your farmland over time. And there's a lot of other soil health discussions around biological soil parameters, increased disease resistance. All comes with this compost application. We're a little bit behind in North America markets compared to European or possibly to California markets, where there's been long-term studies on compost soil amendments in agriculture, 10, 20-year studies where they've proven without a doubt that this type of compost application is highly beneficial. But we are definitely starting a lot of work. Ontario has been a leader. Some other provinces have been a leader in getting more field trials and getting more uses of compost in agriculture, getting them started. Now, economics is a big deal on agriculture. You're talking about your cost per acre. You know, people know how much it costs per acre to do chemical fertilizer, how much is it going to cost per acre to do compost nutrient management. Right now, a lot of the studies that are going on in Canada are trying to nail that cost down as accurately as possible for each region. But, you know, looking at application rates in the 5 to 10 ton per acre, the research to date has indicated there's direct cost savings just in chemical fertilizer replacement alone. So this is what we're basically trying to get that concept, get that idea out there. A lot of great agriculture researchers are doing some wonderful work on this. You're going to see a lot of R&D coming out from the CQA and from the Compost Council of Canada as the various regions promote this this use of compost in agriculture. Another thing that's being talked about, obviously, is in the news now again, is greenhouse gas. How can we benefit climate change? Compost soil amendments to agriculture are a definite greenhouse gas credit. So this is something that needs to be worked on and developed as we move this market forward. Now, moving into landscape growing medias and mulches, one of the things I always like to say here is really bulk versus bagged, bag versus bulk. That's usually the initial comment that I get when I speak of compost in landscape work. Much compost and compost mulches are sold in bulk into these markets. Many composters are asked questions about what it would be like to bag. Should I package my product? Should I not? Understand that one of the things I like to mention is that bagging the product, putting your product in bags, makes it more accessible to consumers. It makes it easier to store, to handle, to deliver, to put it into those retail channels. Obviously, where you're capable to move your product in bulk, bulk is just as good of a market. The key is to look at, you know, will my ability to bag product, will that increase my amount of volume? It may increase your distribution, the distance with which you can distribute your products efficiently. This is something you want to look at. Are you keyed in on moving more volume, or are you keyed in on making more money per dollar with the volume that you do have? The cost implications of bagging versus bulk are very similar. So if you can move it in bulk, that's highly recommended. I've often said, you know, one option is to, if you want to get some bags of your particular product and you're a compost producer, you know, use a local packaging company in their off time to package, you know, package off 10,000 bags for you. You know, then you'll have it. It'll be there for you to distribute, to use it, to develop your markets locally. Get engaged with your local garden clubs, with your landscape associations. Get the message out. You know, compost-based growing media for outdoor use is really has made significant inroads and is really the growing media of choice for outdoors landscaping. And that is something that's happened over the last number of years in some of the significant markets as peat-based mixes have moved more toward indoor and container media, nursery professional, and as compost has carved out a bit of market in the outdoor segment. Speaking about moving up that chain, what I wanted to put a section into the pyramid that basically it's a section for compost and engineers. You know, how is compost going to become the next sediment and erosion control nuance? How do we introduce compost to construction engineering? How do the big project guys get the knowledge that's needed and how do we get the specifications adjusted? How do we introduce compost to this highway, right-of-way, large subdivision construction, big mine reclamation, these kind of things. This is something that I think the guys, I best direct you to companies like Filtrex, Filtrex.ca, their website, a place where you can go and you can see what they've done with compost blower trucks, with Fry Assoc materials. Definitely have been a leader in the use of compost to fit into these equivalent to DOT specification, replacing traditional silt fence with a much more effective compost sock. How we've moved away from just standard sed ponds with a muddy surface. We've moved toward sediment ponds that are more vegetative wetland sediment ponds. By putting vegetative covers with compost blower trucks, we've moved and we've advanced into a better sediment and erosion control technique. So a lot of research and development is going on in this particular area, and I've talked to various compost producers who sell a lot of compost into these particular markets. So I wanted to put it in there. There is obviously some detailed analysis needs to be done to make sure your compost works in these types of spreading equipment, blower trucks. We have to look at a lot more at grain size distribution and things like that. But this is definitely a market that is coming along, and it's definitely one that you'd want to look up in your particular region. Now, you're getting quite far up the technical scale when you start looking at use of your compost in what we would consider professional horticulture. Professional horticulture, you're entering into the world of research and development for nursery, greenhouse mixes, very light density mixes, very sphagnum peat and aged pine bark based type growing medias. A lot of significant importance toward consistency. A lot of other quality characteristics such as pH or electrical conductivity, cation exchange capacity, drainage, a lot more sophistication in what can be utilized or how compost fits into these markets. Now, I've put a picture of a dryer system that I'm familiar with. Some have gone as far as to say, if you want to enter into this market, your product must be very similar in weight, moisture content, and density to sphagnum peat moss and the other ingredients. So you're trying to get to a very light density material in the 6 to 12 pound per cubic foot range. This requires possible drying, possible screening, really to get a product that is acceptable to this market. Now, when you get a successful product in this market, it can be up to 20 to 40% of the professional mix. So that's a huge market opportunity if you're willing to invest in the additional processing, possibly additional drying, possibly additional screening to get your product to a level that your R&D people will take into the greenhouse, into their nurseries, and start doing extensive trials, obviously testing various recipes and detailing exactly how well the different mixes performed. And so there could be things that are crop specific, that are plant specific. It could be tomato plants, or it could be some other flower. They all have different requirements with respect to their professional container media, and you'd be consulting a number of horticultural experts to really sign off on a compost that would meet the value level to get into this market. Now, of course, if you can introduce yourself into this market, there's potential large volume, and there's potential significant value that would be from your compost for this use. Many have said that with the new bans on methylbromide fungicide. They need to introduce microbial balance into their professional mixes, so they're looking at compost, they're looking at other substitutes that would bring some microbial, good microbial balance. So these are things that are being looked at, and definitely something that as you get higher up on that market scale, you can look into. Moving into turf and top dressing, I put our sports field, golf, turf, parkland, grass operators in a pretty high level of sophistication. One of the things that we really are starting to focus on just in this market alone is trying to take that from the golf course turf specialist down to just your regular old backyard lawn care. You've got some national healthy lawn care strategies being promoted federally that are asking people, mow at a higher level less often, core aerate regularly your lawn, and compost top dress, fertilize with organic-based products. This is being promoted as a healthy lawn strategy to regular homeowners to try to get them to reduce their dependence on chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Is there an opportunity for compost to fit into this marketplace? Yes. Is it a tough specification marketplace? Yes. Turf researchers, golf course superintendents are very particular about what they apply to their grass and their lawn. These are products that have been highly processed, highly pasteurized, probably the extent of dried, and probably made into various agglomerations or particles. So this is something that as you want to move into this market, this is something that you want to do a fair amount of research on. But there is a great opportunity, as you can see in the photos, trialing various top dressings for grass and turf species to see how the grass grows and how many cuts you can get on it. These are all things that are moving that research forward and moving that market, opening up that market for new entrants, and compost is definitely right on the next opportunity to get into there. Now, there are you will see some compost spreader. If you Google compost spreader, you will find there's a number of people out there developing compost spreaders that will work with various qualities of compost. This is something that is important. If your compost is of a screened quality that will work in the various compost spreaders that are available out there, you may just be able to enter into that market. Obviously, your CQA testing for a lot of different variables and how they would affect turf is important, but you may be able to look at the different options for what spreaders, what the turf people are using as spreaders currently, what you have to do to your compost in order to make it fit in that spreader. Do you have to dry it? Do you have to screen it to less than 1/4 of an inch? What is it that they need for the type of spreading equipment that they currently use? And what is the opportunity to introduce new spreading equipment that may be able to handle a more coarser material? Well, these are all things that, as you look at these markets, they're an opportunity to move in, to access sales that are of a high value, that are potentially of a high volume, and to really move your compost to a much more higher value sale. Now, actually, the top of my pyramid, this is where I end with where you can get compost into markets. The top of the scale is organic biofertilizer. I've taken a picture of a pellet fertilizer plant that I was at. What really has to happen here to get into that organic biofertilizer market is really having the high nutrient compost ingredients, having the access to condense or to pelletize or compress that nutrient and organic matter product into a spreadable ballistic pellet. These are things that are absolute necessary when you want to look at your products as an organic biofertilizer. It definitely has to be something that is of similar pellet or crumble, similar to the type of spreader equipment that is utilized today for chemical fertilizers, because that is the type of spreading equipment your product will have to fit into. I mean, there are obviously much higher value for your end product sale if you can capture that fertilizer, compress it, get research to show that there's not only nutrients in there, but all the micronutrients, all the organic matter, all the calcium, all the other microbial strength, positive microbial benefits that might be captured into that ballistic particle. Now, the consumer trends are heading in that direction. Organically produced food is rapidly expanding across North America. With the culmination of the USDA NOP, so they have a national organic program in the U.S., a national set of standards in Canada under the Canadian Organic Standard, and you have your OMRI list who certify approved inputs. What you're seeing is with these national approaches to standardizing the laws for the production of organic crops, what you're seeing is that is causing a growth in that particular market. That market is trying to meet that trend of organic food, and if you have the benefit of investing in the type of processing equipment that's needed to produce this, to convert your organic recycled compost into a biofertilizer, this is definitely something that is rapidly expanding, and it's definitely something that it's an innovative way to add value to the product that you're making. And in compost, to me, it's kind of like the very highest level of compost market, and I would advise, once again, to follow the pyramid that we started out with. Maybe I can go back to that pyramid for just 2 seconds and we can just finish up on that. I've talked about slides for all the particular levels of the pyramid and finished with the biofertilizers at the very top. The most important thing is what level of investment in processing, in additional testing, in additional screening, additional grinding, drying. As you keep moving up that pyramid toward the higher markets, what investments are you willing to make to add value? And then if you add these value and add these costs of processing, will you be able to enter and be successful and be accepted into these different pyramid sections on the pyramid? This is when you need to consult with the actual consumer, the commercial organizations that really represent these various industries. Have those conversations. Connect with those organizations. Ask them what types of quality that they're looking for in their particular need. Contact your local researchers. Every province has a great agriculture extension university. Contact your local research or your industry associations, and you'll find out what the type of exact quality is they're looking for in these markets. And so I believe that summarizes our talk for today. Jolene, how's the time?
Excellent. Thank you. You've actually left 15 minutes for questions. So if anyone has any questions pertaining to the presentation here, if you could either raise your hand, pressing the little raise hand button, and I'll unmute you, or you can type into the chat section and I'll read the question out loud.
Okay, and so I just remembered that I'm on my questions slide at the end here, and I've put up the contacts for Susan Antler at the Compost Council of Canada. What I wanted to mention was that this particular presentation, the slides, the information from the slides, that will be available at the Compost, www.compost.org. If you wish to go get the copy of the slides, you can view it at compost.org. I believe they also have this talk. I think Jolene will explain how this talk is kept on her webinar location. And I put up the information for myself, rjfryassociate@gmail. If you wish to email me any questions at a later time, I'll be sure to try to get back to you with any questions you may think of in the next little while.
Excellent. All right, so we do have our first question, and it's from Jonathan Dursey, and he's asking, when increasing the organic matter in compost, is it better to use a raw bark or a bark fine?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a really good question. Obviously, organic matter materials like raw bark and bark fines both have a very high organic matter content. The bark fines may my sort of answer to that would be I'd really look at the raw bark, the bigger pieces of bark, because the bigger pieces of bark have a tendency to have a bit of a lignin and hemicellulose protective layer, and so not all of the carbon is completely exposed. Whereas when you look at finer material or fines, what you see is the carbon is so readily available that if there are any remnant microbes, they'll completely they'll do a lot of quicker conversion. And if you want to bring in some of your organic matter as just protected carbon, you're better off probably with the raw barks. I hope that helps a little bit.
I think it should give a good explanation.
Yeah, and achieving a high organic matter in a finished compost is all about sitting down with your feedstock recipe and reviewing your feedstocks and understanding which feedstocks bring the most sand or gravel or silt or clay or inorganic material, because compost is really just organics, inorganics, and water. And so if you can review your feedstock recipe that you're using and sort of identify any of the feedstocks that may be contributing clay or sand or silt in higher levels to your finished product, that is going to displace some of your organic matter content.
Is there a range that you would recommend that you want your organic matter content to be in?
Well, for compost, on the basic quality of compost is 15%. It has to be greater than 15% organic matter. That's a basic sort of a low minimum for to be a compost. You know, obviously many composts are average in the 30 to 50% organic matter, and that's talking as is. So you know that means there could be a compost that's 45% moisture, that's 50% organic matter on dry weight, so or on as is. So you'll see, you know, composts can be very high in organic matter as a percentage of overall mass.
Excellent. The next question comes from Michelle Letnick from Metro Vancouver in BC. She's asking, does the cost of supply, delivery, and application of compost for, I'm not sure what the acronym means, but for SNEC compared to traditional methods? Does that make sense?
Okay, she's referring to sediment erosion control.
Oh, sorry. Do you have any information on the cost of supply, delivery, and application of compost compared to traditional methods?
Okay, yeah. Well, that would be something she might want to email to me.
Okay.
And I can definitely work on something like that. You know, what I've done is when I built that original pyramid showing the various costs of compost, you know, what I did was said, okay, I'm just going to average this across different markets. I meant to say at the time, I know I had in my notes to say, you know, the fact that I'm showing topsoil in the $5 per cubic range, $5 per cubic yard, that's FOB, that's the price that you receive for the compost at your compost facility. What I wanted to add was different markets, different regions, there's quite a variation. Even here in Atlantic Canada, right here in Fredericton, where native sources of topsoil are quite plentiful. There's a lot of farmland floodplain. We're on a river floodplain. The city is built on a floodplain. The price of topsoil is very suppressed. I mean, it's $6 a cubic yard. But then you go to a different city not far away, St. John, or even Halifax, a city where it's built on a bit of a granite rock base, and there isn't a lot of farmland or floodplain located nearby. Traditional topsoil had been trucked in from further away, so the price of topsoil is much could be double what it is in a city only, you know, 3.5, 4 hours apart. So when I look at Vancouver market, there would be some overriding economic factors that I would have to, you know, talk to the different producers and players in that market to see how best to answer a question like that.
Okay. Our next question is from Gordon Light from the city of Kelowna, and he's asking, when producing compost, we use the aerobic process. Over time, we found that curing in an anaerobic pile has improved the quality. Are there any studies that support this?
Okay, and so something like that, there's a couple different things that happen in aerobic versus anaerobic. Composting itself is all promoted as aerobic. It's an aerobic process. We try as hard as we can. We're getting into compost engineering here, how we engineer compost piles so that they would produce the best compost, so that they would achieve the best temperatures, so that they would, you know, have a proper pathogen kill, have a proper weed kill. Achieving those thermophilic temperatures initially in the first phase of composting is so important, and the thermophilic bacteria are aerobic, and so they need air. Now, when you allow a pile to go anaerobic, you're maybe at a later stage you put something in a very large pile, you know, and it does some it turns anaerobic on you. My first thought is I get very concerned about things like electrical conductivity. I get very concerned about things like pH, which might drop in certain pockets where anaerobic activity has occurred. And so you have to sort of be careful in how that reacts within your compost. When you're marketing a compost in the upper levels of sensitivity, so when we're talking about bag products or professional growing medias, you're starting to talk about very critical very critical parameters for pH, for electrical conductivity, salinity. You know, when things turn anaerobic, there's potential for those various parameters to change, and so that's something that in the particular use that this particular producer may find it's beneficial to have an anaerobic phase. It may drop his pH somewhat. It may create some ammonia, and it may, in effect, produce a compost that actually works better in an end use that prefer a lower pH compost. So, you know, you have to kind of balance all of those factors. In order to answer that question correctly, I'd really have to have a much lengthier discussion about what his end market he's using it for, and what are the key characteristics that his consumers like or dislike about his compost. And that's something back to the CQA again, the Compost Quality Analysis, the Compost Quality Alliance. The analysis that's provided to get you a CQA registered compost, that analysis goes well beyond your standard safety reading. So you do your pathogen and your metals testing as a safety factor. But to sell a compost, you're selling quality, and that quality is in its nutrients, in its organic matter, in its maturity, in its salinity, its EC, its conductivity. These are the kind of things that a consumer is looking for, and these are the kind of things that a CQA test goes well above your standard provincial environmental tests. So really hoping that the CQA and the CQA lab will be not only a place where you can test your compost and get your compost registered at CQA, but also a place where you can contact your lab agronomist and you can get a lot of advice on exactly how your compost, the various other agronomic parameters of your compost stand up versus the different markets.
Excellent. Well, just to wrap this up, I actually have two questions. My first is that what happens to the microbial populations when you dry your compost product?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. What the research is showing that I've seen to date, it's very important not to drop below a certain moisture content floor. You'll have people who want to do some pelleting, and they will say my pellet mill requires the compost to drop below 6% moisture, be ground into a fine talcum powder, and then pushed through a set of compressed dyes. Well, that is considered too low of a floor for microbes. Now, when you're drying compost, you want to stay above, say, 15% moisture as the lowest you're going to go. If you can leave a sort of a floor, or don't go too far below a certain floor of moisture, you're going to have a lot of microbes survive. They're very, very hardy. The positive microbes, the beneficial microbes, are very, very hardy, and they can withstand a lot of environmental, changes in their environment, whether it's pH or moisture or oxygen. They have the ability to go dormant, and then they have the ability to reintroduce. So what the research that I've seen today, the researchers I've talked to who've done a lot of microbial testing of the various products that have been dried and granulated, and it's really came down to a certain minimum moisture content that you don't go below in order to keep them. They may go dormant, but they're there, and you hope that when they're reintroduced to the growing media environment, they return and flourish.
Thank you. And my last question is referring to the CQA. Where can you get your compost tested at a CQA certified laboratory in Canada?
So right now, obviously, a CQA certified lab is A&L Laboratories. They have a number of places across Canada, but the London, Ontario location, the Ontario location for A&L Lab, they're currently a location that does the testing that is part of the CQA program. Very easy to send your samples to there. Can look them up. Courier your samples along to them, and they when you mention CQA, they know exactly they're set up to do the program. So they're currently, when the Compost Council of Canada went out to develop the CQA, the Compost Quality Alliance, the set of testing was developed, the standards was developed, and if you have a local lab that wishes to do that testing, they can contact Compost Council of Canada through the CQA, and it's possible that if they follow the standards, the testing standards, they can work with A&L Labs and Compost Council of Canada to be a certified CQA tester.